What's up guys, welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, just Zach, because I lost my medical license. Apparently, surgically attaching children to toilets is cruel and an inhumane potty training method. Whatever. I need to get some payback at these medical board chumps eventually, so let's get some inspiration from these spicy tales from r/ProRevenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called Band Screws Over the Producer. Here's another little tale from the days when I had my own production studio. My studio was located in a larger rehearsal recording studio complex in South London. The studio manager had taken a local band under his wing and had given them free rehearsal and recording time in exchange for the band working in the facility, keeping things tidy, looking after incoming clients, yada yada. Eventually, they were treated as lackeys in return for free rehearsal and demo studio time. Now, these guys were seriously good. A really decent hard rock outfit who were all very talented young musicians. They also had zero attitude. Something of a refreshing outlook in those days. One day, the keyboard player, Chris, and not his real name, came into my studio and told me that the studio manager had decided that it was time for them to put out their first single. To that end, their manager had forked out for 3 days in a frontline studio, together with the services of a very well-known producer. In other words, several thousand quids worth of investment. Cool, I thought. About bloody time. Chris then asked me if I'd be interested in programming all his keyboard parts for the recording. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity. We laid out our plan of action. I had a fair number of synths in my studio that we'd use to supplement his keyboard arrangement. We'd arrange all the keyboard parts on the computer, around 20 tracks worth, and lay down guide drums, guitars, bass, and vocals on my 8-track tape recorder. By judicious use of a timecode track, we could run all these keyboard parts in sync, together with the guide tracks without having to mix them down to the 8-track. So then we spent 4 days working. The first 2 days were spent programming all the keyboard parts and creating the necessary voice patches. The other 2 days, we worked on laying down both the keyboard parts into the computer and recording all the guide tracks. We then did rough mix downs of both tracks for demo purposes. So far, so good. The next day, the producer rocks up at my studio and listens to the mixes. He then states that he's not happy with the song's arrangements and demands they be restructured, much to the annoyance of Chris, who'd written both tracks. I said that rearranging the keyboard parts was fairly trivial. It's all on the computer after all. But we'd have to re-record all the guide tracks. Get it done. So another day to rearrange the keyboard parts to the producer's notes, and another day to re-record all the guide tracks. All the while thinking, well, that's another 2 days on the bill. Bonus! Again, we produced rough mixes and finally got the grudging approval of the producer. Come the day of recording, I cart all the gear we'd used up to the studio. I laid down the timecode track onto the 24-track on the studio and patched in all the synth gear to the mixing desk, so that they could drive all the keyboard parts from the computer without having to lay them down or submix them onto the multitrack. For the curious, the drums occupy 12 tracks, guitar and bass 2 each, and there were 4 vocal tracks, 20 tracks in total. Another 2 were taken up with the rough mixes as a guide, leaving 1 track to spare. While I'm rigging everything, the producer was boasting about how he demanded the hire of a Lexicon 480L. At that time, the preeminent digital reverb system, and one which cost a small fortune to hire, let alone purchase outright, about £15,000. It also became obvious that the producer and engineer were old cohorts, and judging by their demeanor, it was also clear that they were indulging their own predilection for Peruvian marching powder. 3 days later, I get the call that they're all finished and to come and collect my gear. By the time I get there in the evening, the only dude on duty is the tape operator. He asked if I'm interested in hearing the final mixes. Of course I am. So after loading all my kit into the van, I go back into the machine room to hear the results. I was horrified. Guitars so high in the mix it was obscuring the vocals sounding like strangulated chickens, the drums, the less said about them the better. Think flatulent warthog in a bath of custard. The bass? What bass? And the keyboard parts I'd spent so much time on virtually non-existent. I was incensed and expressed my annoyance at the tape operator, whilst reminding him that I was not having a go at him personally. I then took all my kit back into the studio and went to the pub for the calming influence of a large single malt. The next day, I'm in my studio sorting out some stuff when the phone goes off. It's the producer, apologetic with rage at the comments I'd expressed at the tape operator. Holding the phone away from my ear, he was rather loud. I let him rant on until he ran out of steam. I then suggested he bring his tape down to the studio and compare it to my mix in front of the band and their manager, and let them make a determination as to the relative merits of the two mixes. He bit, and the next day he shows up full of bluster and bravado. We adjourned to the main studio and played back both tapes to the assembled folks. Afterwards, the silence was palpable. The band expressed their opinion that my rough mixes were far better. The manager, however, said that he thought the producer's version was superior. Glancing at him, I could clearly see he was in a bit of a quandary. He just dropped the best part of £4,000 on the recording session and thus felt justified in his opinion, even though it was apparent his real feelings went the other way. He wasn't about to lose face in front of the producer. I left them to their own devices. Frankly, I don't give a damn what you do as long as you pay my invoice. The next day, Chris pops into my studio and says that their manager is going with the producer's mix, despite the band's vehement objections, and is sending that tape to the pressing plant. Fine, I said. Then Chris adopted a conspiratorial tone. We think your mixes are exactly what our sound should be. Can you give me that master tape? Sure, but why? He then said he had been tasked with sending the tape to the pressing plant and, with the approval of the rest of the band, was going to substitute my rough mixes for the producer's version. Ooh, delicious! Okay, but on your own head be it, you're responsible for the fallout. He readily agreed. Fast forward a couple of weeks, 1,000 copies of the pressed single have been delivered to the studio. I turn up and go into the main office to collect my mail. Sat there is the producer who, as soon as he saw me, adopted a smug expression. He then proceeded to slap the single onto the office's stereo system and proceed to crow about his talents as a producer, while expressing the opinion that I had a lot to learn. I politely listened while he ranted on, and once the record finished, said, "I'm sorry, dear boy, but what you just heard was actually my mix. Perhaps if you spent less time indulging in the devil's dandruff, you might have noticed." Whereupon, I discreetly withdrew to my own studio to the sound of the producer howling like a Valkyrie on steroids. I learned later that the band had managed to sell virtually all of the singles at their subsequent gigs. Not bad for a rough mix. Okay, first of all, the writing, spectacular. Thank you, man. Also, that's really cool. They used your mix, everything worked out in the end, that's pretty cool. However, that's not quite the revenge I was hoping for. I was hoping for, I don't know, at least 3 deaths, maybe 3.5? I'm kidding, that was a good story. This story's called Changing a Big Fat Target on My Back to My Boss Being Escorted Out by Security. This happened a few years ago, but the story appears to be a good match for this sub. I was one of 2 commercial writers or producers working in the production department of a local television station. Our department was responsible for producing both the newscasts and commercials for clients who purchased airtime on our station. The department is high stress. I had to manage multiple deadlines and provide creatives for about a dozen ad campaigns every month. That being said, I always met my deadlines and our sales department was always complimentary of my work, steering the more important clients my way. Unfortunately, managers in my department came and went with unsettling frequency. In the 9 years I was there, I had 6 different managers. Most often, the managers were passing through with their sights set on snagging upper-level management jobs in larger television markets. This meant their experience actually doing the work of television production was often minimal, so they had a tendency to not interfere with our work so long as clients were happy and deadlines were being met. Given the managers were so disengaged, I told our general sales manager, about my idea for saving time and money in the department, and he suggested I apply for the production manager position the next time it opened up. So I did. I did not get the job. I was told I was too important, maintaining good client relationships through my work as a producer. No big deal, I thought. I was happy as a producer. Unfortunately, the person they did hire for the position ended up being a monumental poop shoot of the first order. I'll call him Bob. The first thing Bob wanted to know was who in the department had applied for the position he now filled. I don't know what idiots in upper management thought it would be a good idea to tell him, but someone did. It soon became apparent he wanted to find any excuse he could to fire me, because that was just the kind of insecure idiot he was. It began by him writing me about the time I was taking to complete commercial productions. Then he accused me of undercharging clients in my billing. He wanted me to wear a suit and tie, which he knew I hated. As the writing on the wall became clear, I began documenting every single interaction with him, taking notes about what was said and contradicting his accusations with the facts. All the while, he is managing to anger a whole lot of people in our department, and morale really began to tank. Bob was petty, vain, and given to things like announcing how lavish and wonderful a vacation he was planning would be. He was going to Aruba, so he'd put up travel posters and printed out a ridiculous sign he taped to his office door that would be saying something like, "My island adventure begins in 2 weeks." All this served to remind us that he was the only one in our department who made enough money to take that kind of vacation. Eventually, an incident occurred where I missed a deadline through no fault of my own. The client wanted to change up the creatives at the last minute, and we had to bump the film shoot. Somehow, Bob got it in his head that I should have been a mind reader and anticipated the client's wishes before they were communicated. He calls me into his office and begins berating and threatening me. I had had enough. I'm the kind of person who will take a lot of crap with patience and grace. But when I am finally pushed to my boiling point, I freaking explode. I start yelling back, "You're a freaking liar! And if you think I don't know how to handle this client, then fine. Let me see how you freaking do it, because I'm out of here." And I walked off the job. I'm so amped up by what just transpired after leaving the office. I walk all the way home, a distance of more than 6 miles. Just as I am nearing my house, my cell phone rings. It's Bob. Evidently, it just dawned on him that he would, in fact, have to produce the ad campaign himself because our other producer had the week off. He hemmed and hawed and finally blurted out something that was quite revealing. "If we lose this client, we'll both get fired and I can't afford to lose another job." Really? So you've been fired from all your other jobs? What a surprise. I tell him to go love himself because I'm not taking his crap for 1 more minute. All the while, I'm literally trembling with the knowledge I've walked off the job without another job to go to, and I have a wife and 2 kids to support. Thankfully, the next call I get is from the general sales manager. You know, the guy who recommended I apply for Bob's job, resulting in this whole dookie typhoon. By now, news of my blow-up evidently made it back to him. He asks me about what happened, and I fill him in and apologize for walking off the job while also telling him there's no way I'm working for Bob. He says, "Yep, leaving work wasn't a good idea, so do me a favor and come back. Email me the details of what happened and I'll see what I can do." Thanks to my copious note-taking of all my interactions with Bob, it takes me no time at all to send him the complete history of Bob's boobery. So I return, hoping to avoid Bob. Thankfully, his door was closed and I keep my head down in my cubicle. A half hour before quitting time, I notice our general manager and a security guard getting off the elevator together. I stand up to see where they are headed and am elated to see it is directly towards Bob's office. What transpires is even better than the revenge options I was contemplating. Bob emerges from his office carrying a box of his belongings, including the rolled-up Aruba travel poster, and is escorted by the security guard to the escalator. Now standing up in my cubicle, he runs towards me, his face beet red with embarrassment. As our eyes meet, I flash an ear-to-ear grin. The Dunkin' Dookie is done. Okay, so that was pretty good revenge. A lesson I'm learning from all of these stories is to always record incidents of, let's say, unfairness, I guess, you know, of the booty holery that occurs in these stories. You know, they always record it, and it's always monumentally important in the revenge aspect of the story. So, if you're looking to have some good old-fashioned revenge, take notes. Quite literally, actually. This story's called Make Me Do the Bulk of the Work, Have Fun Repeating Class, and a little more. First time posting on mobile, so forgive me. Being on this subreddit made me remember something from last year. New to the revenge thing, so do forgive me if this isn't the right sub. I am what you call a mature student. I'm a mother, and this class was 85% fresh out of high school students. This story takes place in a class that is required in order to get a degree. At the beginning of the semester, my instructor assigned partners for several large assignments due throughout the semester. This was new to me since my other classes never did this, but this professor was new, and I figured it was to save time I'm marking. There were 4 major assignments due. At first, my partner Sarah, not real name, was great in the first project. She did her half and gave it to me in a timely manner, so I could add her information to mine. I'm kind of a perfectionist, and she didn't mind. I thought we were good, but by midway through the term, I kept getting messages saying she was busy or didn't have enough time to complete her part. I'm pretty laid back, so while it did irritate me, I figured I could help her and did most of her half. Side notes, I'm friends with the ladies in her dorm, and one roommate is my cousin. I went out for a drink with some of them one night, and the drunker they got, the more they started talking about Sarah and being annoyed with her. Apparently, Sarah was going out to party almost every night, and when she returned, she was loud. She never cleaned up after herself and often brought back random people. My cousin at this point said that she was bragging about getting a free ride in most of her classes that required partner work. All she had to do was come up with a poor excuse that was all, "Woe is me," and her partners fell for it. My cousin pitied them and didn't think it was fair. She didn't know we were partners in class. This peaked me off, but I didn't say anything. Third major project came, and sure enough, she made excuses. I gave her a lot of ways to make up time, adjusting my schedule to hers, willing to meet at the library in the evenings and weekends, offering tips for time management, and nope, still with excuses. Third project received great marks too. Okay, to revenge, sorry about the long post. The final project is worth 45% of our grade. It makes up for a final exam and pretty much a make or break assignment for grades. I was done with her. A week before it was due, I still gave her the benefit of the doubt, and she pretty much shot me down, told me I was such a big help to a fresh student. Facepalm. And she will do what she can to help, but please don't expect a miracle. By this time, I pretty much had the project done by me 100%. I scheduled a meeting with the professor with documents to show of how she never helped. I gave her copies of my email exchanges, text messages, and her admitting she didn't do anything to contribute, but if I was so kind to add her name to the assignment because I am her partner after all. I told the professor that I have been carrying the bulk of the work on projects, and while I understand Sarah is adjusting to university life, I don't find it fair if she got marks on this final project when I've done it myself. In short, I was able to hand it in under myself, and Sarah received an email stating she had a week to hand in the assignment on her own. I blocked her number and left email messages unopened. Also, I informed her roommates to keep documented evidence of her skirting her responsibilities to hand into the office and inform her other partners on her behavior and how she treated me. Okay, so that is revenge that, unfortunately, a lot of us can really relate to. I always had to do a majority of the group work in whatever setting I was in, and it was annoying, but you know what? I got good grades, so who cares? I'm interested in knowing anytime y'all have done something like this, where someone didn't contribute at all, and you were just sick of it, and you told your teacher or something. Let me know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.